Welcome to Film Study and All-American Universe Podcast with Lexi. I'm Lexi. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, rate the podcast 5 stars, all of that good stuff, all of the wonderful things we talk about all the time. Today we are talking about 510 O.P.P. and I have Mena and Kimberly on the line, and I'm very, very excited to talk about this. This was a good episode. I'm excited to talk about this episode with them, and yeah, let's get into it. So, first of all, what were your thoughts? Kimberly, you can go first, and then Mena, you can follow up.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and we talked a little bit offline about it. I enjoyed it so much that it made me nervous for the next episode.
Yes, you did say
like that. It's like they want to give us everything good, all the fun story. Like we're hitting everything. Like, you know, there was some. People got some issues going on, but it just feels like a build-up. It's like I don't even want to call it a calm before a storm. Like they wanted to get you excited.
Oh, it's definitely the calm before the storm. Yeah,
you can tell something is brewing. But I enjoyed it. I would probably, I was like thinking of how I would rate it. I said probably like a 9 out of 10.
Really?
And the only reason it's not a 10 is because of Preach and Coop.
I was literally going to say the exact same thing. I'm not even joking. I love this episode so much. I've really enjoyed season 5 in general. It's been really such a good, solid season. Mike and David are always amazing. I always look forward to their episodes, and this episode was no exception. They're just really sharp with their writing. They're very clever, and they're really able to tie all the storylines together so much.
Right.
And I also rated a 9, and the only reason why it's not a 10 is because of Preach and Coop.
It's good.
And Mike and David are so good at weaving storylines together, but even they were able to successfully, I feel like, weave in the Preach and Coop storyline. So that tells you everything you need to know about that storyline. It's time to dead it. Enough.
Oh my gosh. First of all, it was time to dead that storyline a long time ago. I will say this.
It's still happening. It's not even over.
I know. There's a couple of things. Kimberly, to your point, I think if you have been a fan of like All-American and you've been like a fan of the entire universe started, when the show started, essentially, you would be very happy with the night that we got last night, like including sort of Homecoming, like all of the main
everybody won.
Everybody won last night. If you're like paying attention to the story and you're like rooting for the couples that will end up together, everybody won.
Now, if you're on the losing team, there's nothing I can say.
I mean, I can't say anything to you. But if you were a part of the winning team, you won last night. So I agree. I think the episode was good for All-American. And I think, to your point, I think that they have done a really great job in season 5 overall with the writing and overall with balancing different people's storylines. I feel like that's something that they sometimes struggled with in season 3 and season 4. And now in season 5, it feels like they've hit their stride with being able to balance different storylines. And my thoughts about the Coop, Preach, Mena stuff are well documented on this podcast, so I won't get into it. Well, we will get into it because we're talking about it right now. So Preach. Coop is helping prep Preach, and they're talking about like his living arrangements and whether or not he needs a full-time job, and he's not really taking it seriously. But Coop is really trying to help him. Blah 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 blah. Preach asked Billy to pull some strings to make him a full-time teacher, but Billy has already sent in his resignation. So he's just like, I don't know if I can help you with this one. And literally. And so then I don't know. It's just like this whole thing with Coop trying to figure out a way to help Preach while Preach is also still grappling with whether he should like do one more job or whatever just to get just to get a little bit more money to help sort of provide a better place for Amina to stay, because he might not get the full-time job. All of that to say he ends up not doing that thing, and he ends up getting the full-time job. This is the thing that I liked about it before I talked about why I didn't like it, like, as a whole. I think this would have been a perfect story to tell if we have not been, like, following his story. Like, if Preach as a character only came up, like, every 7 episodes or so or whatever, like, I feel like we would all love this story. We would all love to see Preach go on this journey where he started off in a gang and he was trying to, you know, get right, blah, 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 and he ends up getting this teaching job, and he ends up getting a full-time job. Yeah, Kareem tweeted out an article today that said, like, they are following a real life story of an ex-con becoming a full-time teacher. I did not know that until today, and so it made me appreciate the storyline for what it is more, this specific one in this episode. But again, I think it's a case of the audience just being tired of this story, and if they had pace this out better, if we had not spent so much time on this character as we do, I think we would appreciate this so much, like the story that they're telling, if we just got a lot of bit less of
Yeah,
it.
I agree, and I wish I would have known beforehand that they're kind of emulating a real life story, because I feel like it would make me resonate with the storyline more, whereas I usually just feel like they're just throwing Preach in there to meet a quota,
Exactly.
if you know what I mean.
Yes, I wonder, is it the Preach storyline that we dislike so much, or the fact that it's so tightly woven with Coop?
That's true.
Is it?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Sure.
I think it's a little bit of both,
Okay.
because I think like, take away the fact that he has Amina. Like, I don't think I would care as much if he wasn't a dad, and I understand the reasonings that he's a dad, but I think it's just like there's almost no way you could, like, extricate Coop from Preach, because they've always been the only reason we have Preach is because of Coop.
Yeah.
And you know, now to be fair, again, like, these are, like, good things and pieces, but the way that it's come together is really just not, it's not hitting the way it's supposed to. Like, Coop becoming a lawyer, I said, like, I'm not a fan because I don't want her around Laura, but honestly, it makes sense for her to become a lawyer, and considering all of the run-ins that she's had with the law, and, like, trying to make Crenshaw a better place in her own way or whatever. That all makes sense, but it's like, in the way that we got it, we're just tired. Like, I hate it. Just get it off my screen.
I also just think that whenever they fit in time for the Preach and Coop storyline, it doesn't feel like integrated with what's going on in the rest of the episode. It just feels so one-off.
Right.
And so whenever they are showing one storyline and they cut to Coop and Preach, it feels so awkward. Like, I feel like they haven't figured out how to successfully weave in that storyline, if that makes sense.
I think they again, like, David and Mike, did I get his name right?
Yeah,
Mike and David. Yeah.
Yes, Mike and to your
group,
point from
tandem.
earlier, to your point, they did a fantastic job with this episode and doing that, because now we have Preach going to be, like, it's a part of it, it's integrated better.
I do agree that I like that they've had him more with Billy than just Coop, or, like, Preach and Layla was like the
oh my god, I hated that
dynamic
so
ever, and I just like it. And so I think that to your point, I like that they have had him become a teacher, sort of as organic as possible, but organically through Billy becoming the principal, even though I didn't want Billy to be the principal. But it's just like this remaining sort of background of the Amina and the custody trial. It's like, I don't care about that. Like, I would like to see him be a teacher. Sure, he can be a dad on the side, or, whatever. But it's like it's the whole custody Amina, because it's connected to Mo still, it's connected to Tyrone still. It's just not interesting to me. Like I would much rather see, pop in to Preach every 10 episodes, 7 to 10 episodes or so, and we see him like getting the high schoolers together. I think that would be much more interesting.
Agreed.
But yeah, enough on that. I honestly, we talked about that way longer than I thought we would, which I don't know. Kudos to us. We tried.
We tried.
Jamie, Asher, and JJ. So obviously we got an update that Jamie was stable and all that stuff after her scare. But she is like, even though she's out of the hospital, she needs to find a way to pay her hospital bills. Asher doesn't want her working. She tells all this to Layla. And the group comes together to like come up with this idea of auctioning off dates to raise money to help Jamie pay for her hospital bills so she doesn't have to go to work as quickly. One thing that I loved about this storyline is, and I don't know if it's like the introduction of Jamie's character itself, but it feels like she was a catalyst for us getting more, like a greater view into sort of the Beverly Cruz dynamic as like
growing up I was literally gushing over that last night because I feel like we don't really get to see that dynamic as much because Spencer isn't a part of that. And it was just really nice to kind of see them come together. You really feel how the history between them, like you can really tell that they've all known each other for such a long time. So it was just really nice to see that. We really don't get to see that much.
Yeah, I like how Jamie is kind of like, she's truly like a part of that group. Yeah. She is truly a part of the group, and it I forgot the girl's name who
Vanessa
Asher was talking to. Remember they were at the I forgot about her.
Do not mention her name to me at all.
Because I feel like All Americans' approach with recurring characters, usually they're never really integrated into the group as much as Jamie has. Like if you look back, I feel like the only characters who have been integrated in this way, Simone, and then maybe Preach. But other than that, and I guess JJ, but other than that, no, not really. Like usually they're very one-off.
Because JJ was there.
So
from the beginning.
Really just Simone.
Yeah.
So it's just really nice to see her become
Kia.
Kia too.
She was So
it's just really nice to see her become such like a solidified part of the group and see them come together for her.
Yeah, and I have to say,
we gotta address now.
What?
as much as we love her, it's so crazy. Like the reason that we love Jamie is also the reason why we got a word that we have grown to detest. Like in that moment was when that word was first
stop
used.
I don't even want like don't even say this word on my podcast.
I will not say the word,
but it's kind of grown on me now.
Oh no, it has not grown. Mena, do not say that word on my. I literally just call them the group, the crew, any other word besides that term that shall not be used. But
but the reason we came to love her is just her reaction to Asher obviously dating Liv and just her reaction to it was just this is hilarious. You guys are blank.
A vortex.
I was trying not to use it.
I know.
The actress has so much charisma too. Like if anyone else was
I was gonna say that.
I don't know if I would be as invested in the character, but the actress just brings so much to this character. I can't help but root for her. Like she just brings a lot of charisma to the part.
I was gonna say that, and I think I've said this a couple of times whenever she's on, is that like Maya she has a way of, even with Jamie's first introduction, bringing a very like two-dimensional character. She made her very three-dimensional off the bat, and it's just like you can't. The reason why I think that it's worked so hard to sort of integrate her into the group is because like it is hard to find an actor who can match the chemistry of an already established show
that's
like
been
All-American
together
and like
for
have them be
seasons.
seamless.
That's really hard to do.
Seasons.
Very true.
So yeah, shout out to her. But so they do it after having this funny conversation about conjugal visits and like your rich didn't matter because I was richer.
Listen, I wrote that line down.
Oh my
gosh.
She was.
She had some
one-liners.
lines. She had one-liners. She was making sound effects. It was fantastic.
It was great. I loved it. I loved it. And so anyway, they had that conversation, right, about that this wouldn't be anything sexual. It's just dates, so that people can date people that have girlfriends. We'll come back to that when we talk about Layla. But they have the auction. Denise I thought that they would like just get Denise, but I was not expecting her to just like walk in and sort of take it over. But that is absolutely her character, to be like, you know what, you're a white man, you cannot be auctioning off.
And the fact that she didn't even know Asher. She's like, what's going on here? Hey, you, what's going on here?
Because Asher wasn't even at the wedding, right?
No.
He wasn't even.
No. She didn't know him. And I appreciate that they acknowledge that she's just walking up to this stranger like, what's going on here? Why are these guys here? And he's describing it to her. It's like, no, you can't do this. I'm going to do it. It's like, okay.
Exactly.
It's so hurt.
I appreciate that so much. And she was just like, just give me them cards before you get canceled. No, that was hilarious. I'm sorry. But she holds the auction. We'll get into the dates for the mains in a second. But obviously JJ walks in, bids a $5,000 on Asher. And you know, the rest of this storyline is sort of about JJ and Asher coming back together, fighting about something that happened when they were like 8 years old. And then obviously about things more recently, about Asher being a coach and JJ really not taking that seriously. But they come back together. I would still love to have his last episode addressed, what he walked out saying, but we'll maybe the writers are just gonna chalk that
I fear that's
chalk that out
happen.
to alcohol. No, that's what I'm gonna. I think it's gonna be chalked up to alcohol.
If it does happen, I feel like it's going to be a part of, like, I mean, we see JJ's episode coming in terms of, and I won't rush ahead, but in terms of them really addressing that. And I wonder if it's going to come up, I could see it coming up then, because part of the steps being to make amends. And as far as we know, Layla knows nothing about this, right? Like, she has no clue that this has been said, and we don't even know if he remembers, I could see it coming up later at that point, if at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to that point, when, you know, the group tells Jamie that her hospital bills will be taken care of and she's like officially a part of the group, Liv notices, which, you know, sometimes people come for me for my predictions, but they always end up happening.
I know, you saw this coming. You saw this coming a mile away. I remember you talking about how they were going to weave Liv into JJ's storyline, and it makes sense.
It makes sense, and I was just like, I think they're going to have Layla for the depression aspect, which obviously she did talk to Jordan, and she was just like, you know, talk to him. Obviously, we got that in, 6? We got that in 506, and now Liv in 510 is saying, like, is noticing his drinking and saying, like, I was a high-functioning alcoholic, and, like, you're going down a dangerous path. So I think that's important to have them realize that, and I think it's really interesting that they're having the women realize that, and you know, the guys are not sort of taking note as much of it. But that's just something to watch, like you said.
Well, even so, I think the guys are noticing it, but they're noticing it as typical guys.
Surface level thing.
And even Asher's response to it is more, get your stuff together. Like, you know, like he's not seeing it as a problem or like something's wrong, to your point, like Layla did, where she was like, maybe he just misses you guys, like something's going on there. And then, you know, I think Liv, once she kind of got her head cleared a little bit from all the stuff she's like, she was able to see it a lot more. So I think the guys see it, but they don't truly see the layers to
I'm so glad you said that, because I saw a tweet earlier and they were like, how have JJ, Asher, and Jordan been friends since they were kids, and they don't notice what's going on with JJ, but Olivia has? And like, what I don't think people understand is that obviously Olivia is going to see what's going on with JJ from a more closer perspective, because she's been in his position as an alcoholic. So it's not that
Yeah.
it's not that Jordan and Asher don't care about JJ or don't see what's going on, but I don't think they understand what the root cause is. But Olivia does, because she's been in that position before.
And also, Liv has also been JJ's friend for life.
Right.
So it's not that, they've all been friends for life. And to that point, like, Layla was in the midst of a depression and hid it from people well, just like Liv was in the midst of being alcoholic, hid it from people and hid it from people well. So they're going to notice those signs because they've been through it. And yeah, it'll just be interesting to see where this all goes and where this all
I have a question for you, actually. Do you think that Olivia will end up being JJ's sponsor down the road? You see anything like that happening?
That would be a pretty interesting twist on it. I would not want that for them, though, just because they are, I mean, like, they're not as close as everybody in the group, but because they're already, like, they're friends, I just feel like the lines there would get blurred. And we even see how difficult it is with, I mean, the writers have made it painstakingly obvious how difficult it is to be JJ's friend and also, like, in a position of, like, sort of trying to guide him and mentor him with Asher being his coach. So yeah, I don't know. I think it would be an interesting story to tell, but I also, like, don't want that for Liv just because of the difficulties of that. But what do you think, though? What are your thoughts on that?
Considering she's already tried to be a sponsor before and just seeing how that ended up,
I could see, and I could see her doing it again later on down the line, but just not
at the moment.
And before we, again, I know I'm seeing predictions in the future. This might not be the time for her to take on.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it might not be the time for her to take that on with the possible things that are coming up here shortly. Like,
I wasn't even thinking about that. Look
at it's going to be a lot for her to deal
with.
The
way I am so unconcerned about this this major thing that's happening. I don't know why. Anyway, we'll get to it in a second. Look.
Are we going to skip the sumo wrestling? I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
I enjoyed it.
I love the cinematography. That there's always, like, so far with the directors this season, there's always one shot that I feel like a director sort of puts their stamp on an episode and sort of challenges the usual way that All American works. And so that sumo scene where the flash with Asher and, like, Asher's, like, looking down at JJ, I thought was so inventive because it reminded me of, like, action movies. So I was like, I was loving it. That was fun.
I did like where they left off too, though. Just before we do that, like,
same here.
It was Asher's just
the
like,
hot tub finally got used in present day.
It did.
I was just like, I don't know if any shipper wanted to see JJ and Asher in the hot tub in present day, but there it is. No, but I did like how they ended that, and I think, like, despite the heaviness of what's impending with JJ, like, I really, really loved that group scene at the end where they all were there for Asher. I mean, for Jamie and Asher. But Layla's label. Listen.
All right.
Layla be a 5B. I already know it's gonna say.
It's been serving. Olivia scenes were so good.
Yes.
So good. And it's just like, look, we deserve this after being in the trenches for so long. But they're talking about Layla's article. Like, Liv is reading an article about Layla where she was interviewed, and she's talking about restoring the Keating legacy. Which there are some interesting tidbits that I feel like you really had to pay attention in that specific storyline, but talking about the Keating legacy, and they start talking about Liv's article, right? And she was just like, oh, and the reason, she sort of jumps around in the conversation. She's like, and the reason we broke up was stupid anyway, and da-da-da-da. And she obviously starts talking about Spolivia as they're talking about which place to which position each article should be on the fridge. But they have this cute conversation about Liv and Noah and sort of where it is. And she's like, all right, well then, go ahead, get him back then, get him back.
I love
just
that
like Laura
so
said,
much
right?
because you can tell that Layla is like looking at her a little sideways, like, okay, this might be a little bit out of pocket. But Liv is her best friend, and at the end of the day, you're gonna support your
so
best
she gonna
friend.
stick beside her.
It was just so that conversation was just so realistic.
Exactly.
And Layla's occupied.
Layla's occupied.
She's got her attentions are elsewhere, so we're fine.
It's also one of the funniest things I think about that scene was when Layla said, what happened to Noah? And Liv replied, she was like, he's my coworker, Layla, because they had this exact conversation. She was like, didn't we? She was like, you know what?
That's why she
never mind. What are we gonna do?
Right.
She knew before she even when she said Noah, and she said, really? That's what we knew, that this was not gonna last. But talking about, I also love that Layla encouraged Liv that her article didn't ruin lives.
I love that so much too. She's so supportive.
Yes,
she's one of the few people who I feel like who's been consistently supportive of the article. And so that's something that I just really love about their dynamic this season. And it's been very subtle, but she's just been so consistently supportive of the article and just validating Olivia's reasons for going through with it.
Yeah, and I'll say I think, like, honestly, even from last season, like when Olivia first started being a journalist and like some of her first articles, like Layla has, to your point, it's been more subtle nods to it, but she has been, I think, one of the most consistent outside of like Laura and Billy, who came around, but like it's really been sort of Layla, Laura, Billy, who've sort of been very, very consistent about their praise for Olivia's work.
Even before she starts at, like, what episode? I think it was like 4. There was the one where Jamone was over. And they were. Remember they were in the kitchen when she was questioning herself. She was like, "Your instincts are usually right. Like, trust yourself. Like, even just that encouragement before she writes a thing. Like, trust
even all the way back to Wade. Look, y'all know I got the Layla Beaver receipts. So even all the way back to Wade, when she was telling Jordan, she was just like, Jordan, you need to calm down. Like, what Olivia's doing is probably right.
Exactly.
So that was a little aside on Layla Via. But. And then it ended on the joke of like, yes. Do you think I could get Spencer to hate her if maybe you could write an article about her? So that was great.
I love their banter so much.
Oh yeah. It was so good. But so like we said, they sort of come up with the idea to have the auction. Layla's prepping for that. She's like making dollars for dudes, etc. She's talking to Jordan. I know people hate the fact that so many of their scenes are in the studio, but I personally
made a
love
tweet
it.
about this the other
Jordan's
day, you guys.
He's too comfortable.
This man was laying on the couch.
It's just because Layla used to be cooped up in there, isolating herself from the world, and now the studio feels like a special place just for them two. And even Jordan individually, like, anytime he has a problem or anytime he just needs to escape, he goes to the studio. Like, that's a place of comfort to him, to the point where he feels comfortable enough laying there, legs stretched out. Like, that is their place. So I will never get tired of the scenes.
Let's go back to 416. That's why that's their spot. That's why that's their spot.
You know what? You're right.
That's where, like, we know what was said, right? Like, that's where they took all of those. Okay, let's
feelings.
Let's just go for it. We're gonna say what's on our minds, what's on our hearts. So that's where they're, I think, most free as individuals, and that's where they really like. That's why that's their spot. No,
I agree. No, you're right. I didn't even like put that together, but I think you're absolutely right. Is that it's just like you can't. They are like forever bonded, like, by that moment that they experience in 416, and I think you're right that it is like it has become such a special place for them, partly due to that. So Clay comes in as they're talking, and he's just like blowing a lot of hot air, coming in like a cartoon villain. Like, I don't know, just like
stood up. Oh my god!
Yeah, it's a fall back, Clay. Yeah, no, we love it.
the one time I want to see this man punch somebody and he's acting like an adult
I'm like, why does Jordan have to mature right now? Like, I don't understand.
Yes, Jordan, go after him. Let's go. We want to see it.
But I will say, if we didn't get a Jordan punching Clay, I was very happy that we got a Layla saying, dun, 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 when Clay tried to lie.
Oh, my gosh. The way I laughed at that moment and couldn't even hear him say whatever he said when he was, I laughed out loud. Like, I couldn't even hear what he was saying when he was
like,
walking
seeing the
out.
contrast between Jordan and Layla's reactions to Clay. Like, Jordan was so bothered. He was like, oh, hell no, like, you're not going to disrespect my girlfriend. And Layla, she's completely unbothered.
About to, what did he say? What did he say? Oh, I'm about to knock him on his dumb ass. Like, he's so serious.
He was ready for
gosh.
it. He said,
he was ready.
Smoke.
He was ready. And as we know, Layla was just like, where are you going? Where are you going? No, I can take care of myself. I can handle it myself. And they continue to talk about it, right? As setting up for Dollars for Dudes. They also talked about, we missed this, they also talked about whether or not Layla would bid on Jordan for the auction. And I was kind of so surprised. I was so surprised that she said that she was going to bid on him.
We got to go back to Babe.
Oh my God.
We can't just skip that. We can't just skip that. We cannot.
I jumped when he said that in a good way. Because I feel like in that moment,
she did too.
Wait, they're actually dating. Like, this is
she did too. She melted. She didn't jump.
Y'all hear
she
her?
melted.
Listen,
she melted.
I am a Jordayla stan. Let's just put that out there.
Me too. Everyone
people have
knows.
their feelings and their ships. Okay.
We're all Jordayla
stans on
this
like,
podcast.
Did y'all hear her? Like, she was just like, okay. Like, under her breath. After he said that, she said, okay. And I was like, oh, she's done. She's done. She's done.
But she's been gone. Like I said, she's like 10, 20 feet under the ground at this point. The babe was really cute, and it's just like, again, how gone is she? The fact that she was actually going to, through for Monica Records, like, bid on Jordan is hilarious, because I was not anticipating that. But so the date auction gets underway. We already talked about what happened with Denise. Layla does not end up bidding on Jordan because she's sort of preoccupied with talking to Gia and talking about her communications and, you know, emphasizing this legacy that she has, and she can use the Keating name. This is where I wanted to pause a little bit, because I feel like if you weren't paying attention, we got so far with this storyline with Layla and Clay that I didn't even realize, because artists have been leaving Keating Records apparently and coming to Layla. Apparently he's lost like half of his PR department or something like that. So it's just like, wait, she's been quietly building an empire and like we have not seen this at all.
Yeah, it went 0 to 100
I was so shocked.
Quick. I was very confused about that, because I feel like the last we've like really gotten of the storyline, Layla was in the gutter. And now all of a sudden,
I know.
Keating Records is down terrible.
We thought her only artist was Patience because they're going on tour.
It was Patience in that. What was the other girl's name that she stopped the session for, Jordan?
I forgot. I don't remember his name. The rapper.
Yes.
She was like a jazz musician or something. But like, I'm just like, so did the homegirl from 501? Like, did she decide to leave, or like, what are we talking about here? Like,
yeah.
I don't know, but regardless, apparently For Monica Records is up, and I think that's just going to be something important to pay attention to as JP comes back, and I'm sure he's going to have thoughts on, obviously Clay eventually sort of relinquishes, like Layla's just like waves the white flag, which she didn't need to, and we'll get back to what Clay said, but she waves the white flag, and it's just like, we don't need to keep doing this, we don't need to keep attacking each other, we can support one another. And Clay decides not to use the Keating name anymore. And he decides to give it to Layla. So I think, you know, we'll talk about that more when we get to predictions, but I do think that was interesting as Jordan is trying to figure out how to support Layla.
So you could see in that particular scene, his face softened, right? Until Jordan walks in.
No, he was
So I'm
definitely
like,
like,
was
ooh,
he
maybe there's something
yeah.
still here.
That's exactly what I got from
Jordan
that.
opened, he was
And
like, oh.
hey, open the door. And again,
Actually, I wanted to talk to you. Yeah.
I'm not even using the key. I'm opening the door because she knows that I am on my way here. This is my old, like, it was very much, and that's when you see Clay's face just turns into, oh, this guy's back in here. Because, like, you know, Layla's being kind. They had their nice little moment of, yeah, truce, we're all good. And then he goes right back into that defensive posture once he sees Jordan walk in the door. And I was like, I'm proud of you for being a grown-up, Jordan, but this is terrible timing.
Well, and it is interesting because to get to, like, Jordan and how he got to that point, obviously he told Denise about everything that went on in the group and that he's dating Layla and he's not sure about how to support her with Clay. And she says the whole being a king versus knight thing. But I think he summed it up well when he was just like, oh, they didn't date. So it's like they were not together, Layla and Clay. And Clay clarified something, which I have been talking about, Mena. I know something that you have been talking about
last night.
Me too, because this man
I know what you're talking about, but go ahead.
Because he said the line, what did he say? I forget how young you are.
Yep.
And so it's like it is always discussed ever since it came out, like how old Clay was. I was just like, dude, this man was literally at her senior prom.
Literally actively hitting on her at her high school prom.
Exactly.
Knowing that there was
it's
age difference between them.
Disgusting.
How old is he? Do we know?
He's supposed to be like 20. I don't know. It's like up in the 20s.
He's
up in the 20s. But it was just like Layla was very clear when they met. Layla was very clearly just recently 18 and literally at her high school prom. Like still in high school, has not graduated yet.
And that just makes the situation
it was just
even more sinister. Like, it was already bad knowing that he was sabotaging her and harassing her just because she rejected his advances, didn't want to pursue a relationship. And then you top it off with that age difference.
And didn't respect her boundaries. Like, the whole thing was like... And there's been some interesting discussion
enemies
about
to lovers.
that.
Whatever. Go off, you guys.
I saw that.
Whatever. Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's just like... Clay never respected her boundaries, right? He used her mom's song without permission. He like continued to try to push this like relationship thing when she was very, very, very clear what their situation was and that she did not want to pursue anything more with him. And that's why I was just like, I feel like she waved the flag like she didn't need to, because she was correct in that he was like, it was not just business. He was attacking her personally. It is such a Layla thing to do. And I was just like, you know what? She's just like, my business is successful right now. I don't need to worry about this man. I have my man anyway.
I'm so happy you brought up him not respecting her boundaries, because I feel like that's such a good contrast to how Jordan has been with her, and him just being so respectful and patient with like not wanting to come out right away. And that just shows like such a stark difference between the two of them and why Jordan is so good for her.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned patience, because having patience, not Patience the character, because I agree, and I think it's lost on some that they have patience with each other, and I'll get into this more like maybe in like a separate like Jordala video, but I think this episode shows the patience that they mutually have. Obviously Jordan very much wants to be like out about their relationship, right? When he like, it's so painful for him to get out that word friend when he's talking to Clay, like, I'm her friend, right? And when he's telling Clay not to disrespect Layla, but also Layla and her like just sort of everyday patience with trying to explain to Jordan like, this is how I feel. We've talked about this. I know that you want to address this, but we have talked about this, and still coming at the end of the day. And like, one of my favorite, if not my favorite line for these two in this episode is when she tells Jordan, like right before she goes to kiss him, and she's just like, oh my gosh, you're so dramatic. because he's just like, oh, this is a deal breaker for you. And she's just like, just because we have a disagreement, but I understand where you're coming from and I appreciate it. And
they're
obviously
so good at communicating. I
together.
love it.
She's so good at communicating. And so like they are both so patient with each other. Jordan in terms of like their relationship status overall and sort of this secret that they've been hiding, and then Layla in sort of the day-to-day of their relationship, right? The my wife, right? The Valentine's Day date, right? Like, are we together or are we not? So it's like the whole I feel like the writers keep making a point to say just how great their communication is and how understanding they are of each other. And their last
probably going to be very adorable. Very upset. It's where Bolivia is trying to get.
And that's the truth.
You know
and
I don't mean
You're
that.
speaking
I
real.
don't mean that.
You're speaking real.
I don't mean that. I don't mean that as a knock. But and I know we'll get to Bolivia. I don't want to jump into that discussion sooner than it needs to be. But they're very good. And I don't know if it was the studio scene in 416 that got them to this place where they said some real stuff. Like Jordan's gonna say what's on his mind, and Layla's gonna listen to what he has to say, and she's gonna say what's on her mind too. Like the things that they don't know about each other. It's I'm trying to think of. So there's the JJ situation and the fight with Damon that I think are the two things that have not been
and you
discussed.
don't even know if Layla even knows about
on
that
screen.
or not.
Yeah, we don't know, and that's the thing.
Exactly. Versus, I'll talk about what I see with Bolivia going on, but they're trying to get there, and I think they're on their way there. But this is what Jordala does well.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Film Study and All-American Universe podcast. We had to cut it off right there, but stay tuned for part 2 where we talk about Bolivia and Billy and this whole coaching at GAU thing.